This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week for a very special episode, two erudite witches. This week, I'm joined by Kara Shimborski.
Hi.
And I'm also joined by our very special guest, panelist extraordinaire since 2015 for our panelist episode, Tia Vasilio.
Hello.
Thank you both for joining me this week. I am hyped because today's a special episode. We're going to be talking about Tia. That's it. That's all we're doing because Tia is the most important person on the show. No. Tia is a very important person on the show. And I think we're just going to roll right into the questions that we usually do on those episodes that are all about our panelists. So I guess to get things started, Tia, I was doing, my deep dive into the archives of I Read Comic Books. And I realized your first episode on the show was episode 48 with the wonderful title that I believe you coined on the episode, Sexy Bad Babies, all the way back in December of 2015. I'm pretty sure you and I had like a single or maybe a couple of conversations way back at Comixology. And then I said, hey, do you want to join my podcast, please?
No, actually, I remember exactly what it was.
Really?
It was Comixology Book Club. And we read, oh God, I think it was your suggestion, and I can't remember the name. It's like the mice, the medieval mice.
Mouse Guard.
Yeah, Mouse Guard.
Yeah.
And I went into this rant about like the medieval economy and how it was represented by mice and this like economic theory about the mice. And you were like, do you want to talk on my podcast?
That sounds like me. Like, I just get impressed by the way that people talk about comic books, and I'm just like, do you want to do that regularly with me every week for 10 years straight, please?
Yeah. I was thinking about this habit of yours, Mike, earlier when I was looking around because I moved to a new place a couple years ago, and making friends means you need to just like constantly put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
And as an introvert, that's a struggle. And I was thinking literally earlier today, damn, every town needs a mic. Like, you need a mic to like be scooped up into his little collection of introverts.
Sure. Hey, listen, this episode is not about me. This is about Tia. Okay. So episode 48 was a very interesting episode because I think it was one of the very last episodes that Zander was on. I'm going to put this out to the listeners. If you want to hear an episode where our wizard extraordinaire Zander is on the episode talking about comic books like The Incredible Hulk, with Amadeus Cho, you should go listen to this episode if you can find it on the internet. I'll put a link in the...
Xander's going to edit this part out for sure.
You know what part Xander's going to edit out is me saying, bold claim, Zander and Nick sound very similar when they're recorded. So if you...
Interesting.
So, to me at least. So if you listen to a podcast with Zander on it, you might be thinking, why isn't Nick saying more things?
True. So it's a very interesting episode. You brought to my attention, I think for the first time on that episode, Tia, Monstrous, the comic Monstrous. And you warned everybody before you went in to talk about this book that everything I talk about will have a sort of feminist rant attached to it. And I'll say, after about 10 years of you being on the show, not a lie. Absolutely not a lie.
Kept my promise.
Other highlights was I was reading Secret Wars, and you and Zander were both giving me shit about it because I told everybody I didn't want to read it, and then there I was reading it.
No, actually, I remember that being a running theme. Is like every time you would talk about it, and then you'd be like, "No, I don't want to read this," and then you would proceed to talk about it for like 15 minutes.
Right. I mean, and it brought up this was like right at the tail end of the series. And you said another wonderful thing, which was, I would love to read a book about Doom because I was asked the question, what does Doom do when he's not dooming? And we lost it. Like, there's almost a minute of us like just laughing our asses off about that. So again, Tia, this is the thing that I think you'll find is a consistent thing in your time at I Read Comic Books, which is you have these quotable things about you that inevitably just become episode titles. The infamous Skin Cape episode will forever be like one of my favorite titles of this show ever. I think that was like 5 episodes later. I had you back and you coined Skin Cape,
My favorite thing about Skin Cape is that technically all leather is a skin cape.
Ugh.
If Batman really made everything just out of leather, it would be correct, right?
I saw a social media post about this earlier this week about Skin Cape because someone was like, oh, sure, call your little pet fur baby. But the second I walk into a hospital and say, oh, look at your little skin dog, it's like... Anyway, Tia was there first.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm glad that I could contribute so richly to the lore and lexicon of the show, especially because I feel like lately, I haven't been on the show as much just by virtue of like life and time zones.
Yeah.
And on that note, thank you both for staying up so far past your bedtimes on this lovely weekday.
Listen, I had to make this episode happen. I was willing to sacrifice my body and all the time that I have in order to make it happen. So I'm glad that we're all here today to do it. I think the last thing I'll bring up about this episode is we talked about both of us in separately meeting Kieron Gillen and being nerds in our own respective ways, which was fun. But then the last thing we mentioned, because the episode was about like comic book adaptations and other things like that, was the rumored 2015 diffraction like production of Wicked and Divine.
Man.
Like, has anybody else like thought about that in 10 years? Like, is that crazy that we were talking about it all the way back then, or what?
I mean, the thing about options is they have to renew them every few years, and you get to keep the money regardless of whether they make the show.
Nice.
So, I mean, really, I think what you want in this life is to have a property that just gets re-optioned every 2 years.
That's, that is very, very true. I forgot that that's a thing. Yeah. But
I
anyways,
really love that for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So episode 48, Blast from the Past. I had a blast just listening to it. It was a very long episode, really, really fun episode. And here we are 10 years later, still doing the show, still have you on the show when you can. I guess, how do you feel about all that, Tia, before we get into the other questions I've got?
Well, here's what I'll say about that. Like, I was an art historian, right? And part of being an art historian is talking about art and like breaking it down and doing analysis and talking to other people about how to understand it and what you see in it and how to look at it. And one of the things I really missed when I left that behind and like switched over to comics, like I did not miss all of the academic bullshit and the politics in academia and like that sort of thing, but
Sure.
I missed that. And so I love that the show gave me an opportunity to just bring that one little piece with me that I was going to miss, but use it with media that I actually like, had community with, and like we had fun talking about it. Not that I also love and have fun talking about fine art, but it's just like everyone over there is such a drag and you guys are so much fun,
Tia, I'd like to nitpick one thing that you said just now. You said you were an art historian. I believe it is you are an art historian. You're just art historianing about Monstrous and the Wicked and the Divine and why nobody has media literacy and needs it desperately.
Yes, I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about this a couple of times over the years. So but I do want to just bring it up one more time. Is how did you get into comics? I guess, like, obviously you were art historian, talking about fine art. I still to this day, one of my favorite episodes we've done is where we talked about what is the ultimate way to preserve a comic. And you were like,
oh yeah,
deconstruct the comic completely and separate every single page between fine pieces of paper. And I was like, okay, maybe we've gone too far. So you
take out the staples.
You asked, Mike.
Exactly. I know, and I love that to so much, and it's always curious to figure out, like, how did you go from a child growing up to art historian to this comics expert? Like, where did that journey begin for you?
With comics specifically, I mean, well, obviously my brother and I grew up watching the X-Men animated series as kids, and like, so that was always a favorite thing, but I wasn't really into comics until I got to middle school and I fell in with the weirdos who were really into ElfQuest.
Right.
So it was like all about ElfQuest for a while, and we would like, draw our own characters and make up our own stories, and like we had all the hardcovers, the black and white ones, and we would just like read them together. It was like a very like nerdy friend thing. I think I've said this before on the show, my passport picture from that era, I literally have my hair braided in the 2 Kavi braids down the front in my passport picture from middle school.
Amazing. Amazing.
I love everything about it.
Yeah. And then, like sorry if that just made a noise. You go to high school and you like want to be cool, and this was before Comic-Con was cool. Like it just, I don't want to say I grew out of it necessarily, but I grew out of that friend group. And the friends that I grew into, it was more about music, so that was kind of my thing for a while. And then when I was in graduate school, miserable, and I was kind of just like looking for something to bring joy to my life again, and found the comics again, and that became the thing that I just did all the time. Like I remember I missed the call that I passed my PhD exams because I was in a Thor Avengers Thor 2 marathon at the movie theater. Like, and it was like the fancy movie theater where they bring you cocktails and stuff. And I was just like, I just had the worst experience of my life taking that exam. Just bring me a cocktail, give me Avengers, leave me alone. And then, I would be sitting in lectures writing Avengers fan fiction instead of like taking notes. So
Love it.
Eventually I just kind of thought to myself, like, wow, I'm really, really miserable. Maybe I should do something else. What am I spending all my time doing? Engaging with comics and like the assorted media. Okay, let's figure that out. Like, how can I make that what I do? And then I just basically somehow talked my way into a job at Comixology.
Right.
And the rest is history. And then I met Mike and Kara.
Yay.
Yeah.
I will say in grad school, sorry to interrupt you, Mike, one last piece of the lore. And my department like literally did not know what to do with me. But it was part of my funding package that I got to TA. And so, because like when you TA, you get paid and you get your tuition covered and everything. So they basically loaned me out to the women's studies department. Surprising no one, I'm sure, because they had a professor there, Rebecca Wanzo, who now, shout out to Professor Wanzo. She's the chair of the department, I think now.
Nice.
She's absolutely amazing. She's Eisner Award winning comics scholar. Her books are amazing, and her class was amazing. And we looked at comics in her class. We also had a Twilight module. Like it just was mind blowing. I loved TAing for her class, and I feel like, like I was a TA and like I like graded papers and things, but I learned so much like sitting in the class and listening to the discussion too. Like that was a really great experience for me. And so I think that was the thing that introduced me to the concept of like, no, you can actually talk seriously about this media.
Interesting. A whole module on Twilight.
It was fantastic.
She's talking about comics. You're fixating on the sparkly vampires, Mike.
I know. Here's the thing. I know that this is like a can of worms that I never want to bring up when the two of you are together.
Bring it up,
right?
Mike. Do it.
So maybe we could talk about Twilight later because I don't want to open that can of worms right this second. But this does, I think something you said earlier, Tia, kind of brings me to another question that I had written down for today, which is, I think everyone on the show, at least, maybe everybody that listens to the show knows you're a pretty big like Kieron Gillen, Jamie McKelvey fan. I know like Wic+Div is like the big property we talked about a lot. We've talked about it since literally 2015, which is crazy to me. Like we're still talking about it to this day. We have this, I'll say this now, we're recording this before the annual, but it will have been announced. We have this new Wicked and Divine cover series that's coming out, which is very, very exciting. But it's interesting that, I think the first time you and I talked about Jamie McKelvey and Kieron Gillen, it was about Phonogram, a music or a comic book series that brings the idea of like comic mediums and like Britpop and music bullshit together.
Yeah.
What was it about that series? I think that like, was that something that sparked you and wanted you to just dig into more comics outside of like the Marvel and DC era, or was there something else that got you really hooked on that book?
Yeah, I think that was definitely one of the first like non-superhero books that I got really into. And part of it was like, so I know that I have like a very goth reputation, but I also have a very serious like Britpop side.
Okay.
And it was just exciting to me that other people liked that music too. And like obviously other people do, and there are a lot of them
Right.
in Britain, right? But like, for me, it was like, oh my god, like you like the same music as me, that I've like secretly liked because like nobody here, like people just didn't. It wasn't really part of my scene.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was kind of just that part of it was exciting, with Phonogram, and then also like the themes of like magic and cynical black coffee self-destructive characters, but ultimately for the purposes of like regeneration, because even horrible people can do better for themselves, and I'm just a horrible person for your own protection, but like if you're gonna love me, it better be on purpose, and I'm gonna make sure that like you're gonna rue the day, but also like maybe I can get better. I don't know. Like I really liked those themes in that book, and um the the artwork, like is really cool, and I really liked I don't I, black and white artwork isn't always my favorite, but I really liked it here. Like I thought it worked really well here. So it was just like it was cool aesthetically as well as the. I'm sorry. Can you guys hear Holiday because she wanted to? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's a good segue to Mike asking about Holiday.
I mean,
really
we were going to
sorry,
get to the
Zander.
holiday segment eventually, so we might as well start it right now.
I'm sorry.
It's totally
guys.
fine. Keep going.
I lost my train of thought. Anyway, it just it was it in terms of like shifting out of the superheroes, and I think that my first Kieron books were like the Journey into Mystery, so that was kind of the like exit into other things.
Gotcha.
You introduced me to that Journey into Mystery run. Like I never in 1,000 years would have thought, oh, let me pick up this like random Marvel title, which is like so silly because I love like swords and sorcery type fantasy and magic, but like wouldn't have occurred to me to read that. And then you were just like, no, this will wreck you. And you know what it did? I got to the end of that story and I was like, whoo. I think I was actually crying. I called Tia or texted her or something. It was just like, what have you done?
And just for those paying attention at home, this is the like young Loki story that Kieron did, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that on episode 48.
And citations.
To this day, I still have not finished that run. I'm
Mike!
Sorry. I know.
You know what?
I know.
Time to cry.
Like there's moments that are hard to get through because it has so many crossovers, which are hard to read sometimes. And I think it's truly like a testament that to Kieron, and there's various artists on the books as the series goes on, but like the fact that they pushed through those crossover moments is amazing.
I mean, yeah, I feel like there are a handful of writers that know how to do that as well as Kieron does, and it's like a short list of all British writers at this point. I think it's just Al Ewing, it's just Kieron Gillen, and maybe Cy Spurrier, I think are the only people that I know that can handle those types of like ridiculous crossovers every 5 issues and still make their story like cohesive. It's very impressive.
I don't know Cy Spurrier, so I can't speak to this, but
Sure.
Just like my interactions with both Kieron Gillen and Al Ewing, I feel like they're able to just kind of like be like the improv. They're able to improv with other people. They don't have the like writer is God ego where it can only be their way. They're like, oh, You're gonna come. We're gonna play, with your toys now. Okay, like let's do it. Okay, yes, and so that kind of gets you through.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe this year, while I'm still on the momentum, right? I'm about to finish a John Constantine run, and I feel like maybe I'll just like go straight into this huge journey into mystery. Go on Marvel Unlimited because it's probably, hopefully, in some capacity, it's maybe there in a reading order, and just blast through it and have a good time.
It is collected in a couple forms. There's a big hardcover, and then there's two very large paperback collections.
Well, this is speaking to me. You've caught me early in the year, Tia. Anything's possible in January for me.
Amazing.
So, I guess, to turn us back to this Wicked and Divine series that we're going to be doing on Patreon, you, and I wrote this in my notes, you have almost every cover / varying for Wicked and Divine, which is, fueling the new show we're releasing. How did you amass such a collection? I am genuinely curious because I think I've heard tidbits over the years, but I'm curious, to what lengths did you go to amass this collection? You showed me a photo pretty recently of all of the books stacked up together, and I went, oh, didn't know there was that many.
No, why are there 12 covers for the first one?
What is this, Dynamite? Publishing? I don't know, right?
So I didn't set out to collect all of them. There's a sort of the Tia lore here is I lived in the middle of nowhere in Massachusetts, and the nearest comic shop was an hour and a half drive away. And I had called them up and pre-ordered the variant cover that I liked. I wasn't even trying to collect all of them. I was just that I like that cover. It speaks to me. Get me that one.
Mm-hmm.
And these covers were not like Marvel variant covers where you have to order 10 of this cover and then you get 2 of that one, blah, blah, blah. That scam was not the thing here. It was just hey, you want to draw us a cover? Cool. So the shop had no excuse, and they just didn't order it for me. They were just oh well. And they were so shitty and rude to me, and kind of low key you're just kind of some dumb girl who isn't that serious about comics, so we're not gonna start a pull list for you.
Boo.
It just pissed me off so much. And it's part of why I got into digital comics, because I was just fuck you guys. Also, weird Comixology connection. Another one of our former colleagues at Comixology used to work at that comic shop. Not at the time. Not at the time.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah, weird universe connections there. So anyway, I was just kind of I'm a Scorpio, so I'm oh,
burn it to the ground.
okay,
yeah.
Well, I'll show you. I will have every cover. I will die under a mountain of covers.
Yeah. Your Wic+Div cover origin story is spite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so. I don't know why I'm surprised.
No, all of my origin stories are spite. But I did. Okay. But also, at the time, I didn't even really know what I didn't know about how many of them there were gonna be. Right? So
how could you know?
Yeah. So I went to New York Comic Con, and it was only a month or two after it came out. No, actually, it would have been a couple months because it came out in the summer, and then New York Comic Con in October. I was dressed as Baphomet, as one does, and everybody thought I was deaf, and I'm no, read the book. And Kieron was one of the only people who was "Are you Baphomet?" I'm thank God, finally somebody notices. And so Mike Ruth, who did there were only 2 variant covers for issue 1 that were not Jamie Matt covers. And one was the Brian Lee O'Malley one, the one that I wanted from the store. And then Mike Ruth did this cool black and white cover that was I never even saw it listed anywhere. I just walked, I was walking down Artist Alley, and I'm wait, that's Lucy and Suck. Who are you? What is this? And so I bought it from him, and then I was wouldn't it be neat if I had all of them?
Jesus,
and
kids.
I don't think I could have pulled it off if I hadn't worked at Comixology, where I could just hassle people, to get them for me when they were super exclusive or weird esoteric ones.
So going to cons and
when our marketing people were going to a con that I wasn't going to, that if they were going to have an exclusive, I was you have to get it for me, and they usually would.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't help or didn't hurt that we worked around the corner from Midtown Comics too, right? Where you could just
That
go and get
too.
3/4 of the variants because they were buying, 10,000 copies of whatever.
No, they used to send us, right? Like Kara, probably we went together sometimes. Like they would just send us down to Midtown with a company credit card and just be like, just buy all the new releases and just, have them in the office. And we're like, and that's the ones that we'd have like 10 of the same book because then we would get comps too. So it wasn't like I still bought comics because I wanted to support books that I liked, but truly like, you didn't have to in that office.
I read everything for free for like 4 years. I bought like hardcovers of stuff that I like. Like all the hardcovers that I have on my shelf are like things that I liked at the time that I was at Comixology, where I was like, I read this for free. I'm going to buy the shiny hardcover version now.
Exactly. Yeah. But what I really loved about the variant covers for Wic+Div, like, and we'll talk more about this on the miniseries, but it never felt like the gimmick that it is for a lot of other publishers. Like it really just felt like a fun way to connect artists and audiences who might not have otherwise crossed paths, Like I discovered a lot of artists that I liked from
like
these.
Jamie has a specific style. This is a mini episode of that series. Jamie has a very specific style, right? In the way that he draws, and it is very clean, right? So I always found it to be interesting looking at those covers. I think I bought a couple over the years. But it's always interesting to look at those covers and see someone else's interpretation of those same characters, not really losing definition, right? But like changing just little bits and pieces, or like especially with the flashback issues that they did, right? Just to see like the way that others would draw these characters that at a certain point in the series and love or hate depending on your reading,
or both.
And I always found that to be really fun. And like you said, it is them like connecting like readers to new artists with interpretations of characters that they have this deep passion for, which is very, very exciting, rather than just like a half naked variant or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, Dynamite.
Yeah, exactly. Xenoscope, guys.
Oh
I
gosh,
can't wait to get my Red Riding Hood.
It's like, why did my brain just immediately go to, I forget his first name, a Campbell cover? Like,
J. Scott Campbell.
Oh God, yeah.
How many Witchblade variants do you guys have at home? Because I've got an entire shelf that you can't see.
It's funny because I know everybody makes fun of their Brokeback poses. As a very flexible person, I'm like, what's the problem? That seems normal to me.
Oh my God.
That is the end game somehow in this, is that you eventually just become like some sort of model for these types of poses, to be like, no, it's real, it's realistic. Look, we've got a real person doing it.
No, when I was super jacked, like when I was doing circus aerial and going to the gym like twice a day, and had like 12% body fat, I definitely was like approached once in a while to be like, do you do anatomy drawing modeling? And I was like, no. First of all, it's really boring.
Sure.
You just stand there but yeah, I definitely was like channeling my inner superhero physique for a while there.
Sure. All I can think of is just someone coming up to you at the gym, but very politely saying, hey, could you fold up into a pretzel so I can draw you?
Oh, see, I was just sitting here thinking like, so Tia with her physique going to the gym twice a day, like with her aerial training, and I'm expected to believe that a superhero has a day job and then at some point eats food and then does their chores and goes out at night to fight crime and looks like this, like a Hollywood star with a personal trainer and a nutritionist or whatever.
No, seriously, like I spent a lot of time at the physical therapist office or in like Cold Plunge. Like I want someone to do a comic where it's like the Shield physical therapy office or something, because like Hawkeye's taken the cold plunge. Okay, you guys, like you cannot treat your body like that without a little bit of prehab to keep it going.
This is the Kate Bishop story that you eventually write. That's what I'm hearing right now. But speaking of, competitive bodybuilding. I don't know. I'm trying to find a way to transition to this question. So you used to do, Lyra, and you've done like all this other competitive like gymnastics like stuff. But the one thing that for me seemed to come out of nowhere, but I guess like in knowing you for so long, I can't believe that I was surprised. You like competitively ride horses.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how you got into that? Because that's a very cool thing, but I don't know how someone goes from I like horses to I ride them and compete. Like where's the story there?
So, well, when I was a kid, I rode horses and like elementary, middle school, in my ElfQuest era. Okay.
Okay.
And I actually listen. Horse sports are ridiculously expensive, and I had to work for my lessons. So I took care of this lady's 7 horses in exchange for lessons when I was a kid. And it's funny because when
That's
I meet, it's a lot of horses. And when I meet 12-year-olds now, I'm like, who trusted me at 12 to take care of 7 horses?
I thought you were going to say, like, you meet these 12-year-olds and you're like, when I was your age, I had to care for all the horses in the stable. What do? You show up in your parents' Tesla and...
I mean, they do, but the reason that I have the nice horse that I have now is because a middle school kid had her parents in their Rivian, okay? Not a Tesla, it's a Rivian. Okay. They leased her a horse for the year. 4 months later, she went off to boarding school, and they just like never asked for the rest of the year to like be reimbursed or anything. So they're just like, hey, the horse is paid for if you want to take over.
Must be nice.
I mean, not monthly expenses, but like when you lease a horse, you pay a lease fee and then you pay all of its regular upkeep expenses, training and board and feed and all of that. So I take care of all the expenses, but the lease fee was like covered for a little while.
Tia, what's the silliest expense you've had recently?
Kara.
Hold on.
Okay. So, well, listen, my horse every 6 weeks has to get new shoes.
Can I interrupt and ask, what can you tell us the name of the horse?
Oh yeah, sorry. So his name is Adios. And I don't know how he got that name, but I like to believe that he's named after PFC Vasquez's rifle in Aliens.
That's awesome.
I was gonna say it's a perfect name because his name is Adios, and that's exactly what that girl said to him when she left after 4 months of the lease.
Also, he's very fast. So, like, I don't know. Maybe he was just a little colt flying around, like, bye, guys. That wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, so his name is Adios. He is the sweetest boy. He's very nervous. And one of my greatest accomplishments, I think, even more than the competing, is that he's like gotten a lot more chill since I've had him, which makes me really happy. Yeah. But maybe that's because he also gets a massage therapist every couple of months, and
do horses require a massage therapist normally?
They're athletes, Mike.
Sport horses, yeah, kind of. They get acupuncture. Their shoes are like, every 6 weeks they get their red light therapy. Some people do red light therapy for them.
I'll sidebar this and say I don't ride as often as Tia, but I've been to her stables and I've been to my stables, and her stables is the very fancy rich people stables.
Okay.
So let me contextualize this. First of all, I will say, so during the pandemic, I couldn't do gym, aerial, like indoor activities anymore. Right, and I was like looking for something else to do. And then Kara was like, she's like, I'm just going to start horseback riding lessons. And I was like, oh my God, I used to do that. Like, I should do that again. It's perfect. It's outdoor. So it's really Kara's fault that I'm doing this now.
You were doing it originally, Tia. You're the original horse girl. I just role modeled you back into it.
It's the Spider-Man meme, but you're both horses pointing at each other right now, okay?
And I was riding the slowest off-track thoroughbred who ever lived to get back into things. Tintin, bless his heart.
Aw.
I know. But yeah, so the barn where I go now, it's a very competitive, like A-rated show jumping barn. There are a few girls who like compete for the national team in various countries because they're very international. There's like very high level riders. The trainers are like top notch. It's like, yeah, so this is like a very serious barn. I probably would not have chosen to go to competitions. They just kind of were like, well, you're doing this now.
Just happens. Mike, I'll tell you, my introduction to this barn is I walk in, I say hi to Tia, and then I notice that next to us there's a horse on a horse-sized treadmill.
Oh yeah, the treadmill.
To illustrate.
Well, because like sometimes you don't like, you can't ride them, or like they just are like super extra fresh and you just kind of need to get some energy out of them, or
Sure.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing honestly that impressed me the most was how clean everything was, because the barn that I go to, just like everything is perma covered in a layer of thick dust. And there's just no cleaning it off ever, because the whole ring is exposed to the elements and the stables are exposed to the elements. So then I walk into Tia's barn and I'm just like, oh, you could rent out one of these stalls as an Airbnb. Like, nobody would blink.
We have an indoor arena. Yeah.
Dude, these horses are living good. This is crazy.
They are, but also like they work really hard for us too. So, yeah, I mean, although I will say, like, Adios loves to jump. There are people who think that we're abusing them and like forcing them. First of all, I could not force a 1,200-pound animal to do anything it doesn't want to do. And there have been times that Adios does not want to do what I want him to do, and he lets me know.
Okay.
So, you know, like, we're not forcing them, but Adios particularly will be just like kind of trotting around, like just kind of warming up, you know, and he'll see a jump out of the corner of his eye and he's like, hey, how about we jump that? And I can't stop him.
Well, that sounds fun. I mean, like, so you've been doing this for a really long time. I mean, obviously you know how to ride a horse and you know, work well with a horse. I guess, like, can you tell us about, like, so this barn accidentally pushed you into competitions. What does competition look like for you? I know there's all sorts of stuff. I'm sure you're not doing the like cool little leg dance thing that I think some horses do. Dressage. Thank you. I knew there was a word for it.
So that's I don't do dressage. I do. There's two different, three technically different disciplines of jumping. There's hunters, which is like, they judge you based on like how pretty you look going through the course, and like you have to have like a certain number of strides in between every jump and land on the right leg and like have the perfect, like, you're judged by like the style going through the course.
Choreography.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then there's cross country eventing, which is terrifying, which is where you're just like ripping around through the countryside, jumping over hedges, like, no thank you, please. And then there's show jumping, which is basically just like jump the course as fast as you can, and whoever jumps it the fastest without knocking anything down is the winner. And that's what I do. Gotcha.
Interesting. I did not know about that first one, and now all I want is like a manga style story of like some teens like saying, no, we have to do this perfectly. And it's like synchronized horse jumping or something, which I feel like I've said it out loud. I'm sure that it exists. And
the sexy bad boy who's come over from cross country and they've got to like tame him and get him to do the hunters.
He just wants to get out of the ring, right? Or the you know, and he's just like, I just want to go out in the field.
Yeah. Wow. And it really depends. Like, horses will tell you what job they want. There are some horses that love hunters and are terrible show jumpers. There are horses who are just not brave enough to be eventers and do cross country. Adios, he is so fast. He is so that my only job is to stay out of his way and hold on in that show ring. Like, he is so fast.
Oh man. So you've competed. Have you won any of these competitions? I'm saying facetiously, I know the answer, but the listeners do not.
So we went to a show in August and we went third, which was very exciting.
That's awesome.
We were
That's
sitting
so
in first
cool.
for a
That is really
while.
good.
We got knocked out by some little 10-year-old on a evil little pony.
No.
What?
Like, what is happening?
Tia's arch rival right now in my head is a 10-year-old on a pony. Are you kidding me?
You asked for
But
a manga, Mike. You got it.
I know. I've been proven. This is all real. This is amazing.
Like the level that I jump, which is like 80 centimeters, was this competition.
Okay.
I'll do like 80 or 90 centimeters probably for the next one. But it's a weird level because you have like the little 10-year-olds on their evil little ponies, but then you also will have like professional horse trainers on baby horses who they're like riding their client's horse or something, and so they're
Okay.
just like doing this kind of lower level jump. And then you have like people like me who are adult amateurs just trying to have a good time. And so yeah, I was like, it was a very like mixed bag of competitors so I was happy to win third. Like that was not expected.
Oh, very, very exciting for you. And I'd like to add another layer of flavor to Mike's horse competition manga idea, because I went to a museum exhibition about samurai, and I learned in that exhibition that samurais had horses, but they actually had ponies because that is the type of horse that was in Japan at the time. So whatever image you have in your head about samurai being on like a giant charger, like war horse or anything, no. Little pony, short legs, scootaloo over the rough terrain of Japan. And so when Tia's like evil little ponies, I'm like,
No. The rule with horses generally is the shorter the legs, the closer to Satan.
Oh my God.
Like, I'm laughing because there's a couple ponies at the barn where I go to where I'm like,
No, and like the mini horses are just evil incarnate.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much today, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Like my big dumb warm blood, he's just a sweet doofus. He is like a lover boy. Give him a carrot, he'll do whatever you want. He's like not too bothered. But
Golden
yeah,
retriever horse.
I mean, he does kind of bite me sometimes, but
Aw.
I think just out of affection.
I mean, you dressed him up for Halloween and he seemed fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a horse who was like, he used to be so nervous. And I love how instead of being nervous, we've like rechanneled the energy into just kind of being like a bit of a menace. He's like just really curious about everything now. Like one time the tack room door was open and he just like halfway walked inside and was just looking around like his mind was blown. He's like, what is this? I just let him like pull everything out of my tack trunk and throw it around. Like I basically like have ruined this horse and he has no manners now, but he's like more chill. So I don't know. He seems happy.
Treating your horse like a shark, have to touch everything with their teeth to feel it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of animals that have no regard for any level of politeness.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Holiday is your wonderful cat. Can you tell us about your cat, Tia? Just because we always talk about everybody's pets on the show.
And she always joins us.
Yes.
So Holiday used to be a show cat. She's a Cornish Rex. And she retired from the pageant circuit because it made her very nervous. Like she doesn't like being handled like that. I don't know if you've ever seen a cat show, but they get really handsy with the cats. And she does not like it. Yeah. So they retired her from that. But they were like, we really like her conformation. We want to keep the line, going. So she had a baby, which she was not a fan of. So they were like, okay, she just needs to be baby herself. So now she needs to be adopted out to someone who could just like, she could be a spoiled princess. And that's what she is now. And I will say, people who want a particular breed of cat, but are reluctant to like buy a kitten from a breeder for various reasons, go to a cat show and make friends with the people showing the breed that you're interested in. And like, this is more common than you think. I've had 2 cats this way where like they retire their young, like 3-year-old cat and needs a new home,
Mhm.
and they get spayed and you adopt them, and now you have a fancy cat.
Sounds
All
like
right.
the move.
Also, shout out to Alex DeCampi, who writes the book Scrapper, who based one of the cats, the barfing one, on Holiday.
Oh, the barfing one, Tia.
Well, Holiday has IBD, so she's a barfy girl.
Oh,
I see.
baby.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, we love her, especially when she quote unquote interrupts the show. It's never a bad thing to hear a cat in the background on someone's episode. My cats do that when they come into the office sometimes, like times like tonight when we're recording, they get very confused as to why my door is closed. And so they'll usually either push it open or they'll scratch until I go open it. And then they'll just come in and look up at me and meow because, that's what they do. So I'm never really actually mad that Holiday shows up to you. I got to act like the big bad producer man because I don't know.
She has opinions about comics.
She does. Well, Kara, I guess before I get to my big final question, is there any last thing you want to ask Tia before we wrap up the show here with a huge question, probably?
Oh, I am so unprepared because Tia is one of my favorite people on the entire planet. So you're just like, is there anything that we should know about Tia? I'm like, everything about her is interesting and wonderful. Why wouldn't you want it? We could do like a whole podcast just about why is Tia this cool.
You're gonna make me cry. I mean, I just can't believe, like, both of you, I can't believe we've been friends for almost 10 years.
I know. It's I feel like it was just yesterday we were working just in Manhattan, and now
I know
scattered across the United States.
Times have changed, but I do remember my question, and it is relevant to what I just said, Mike, so don't get mad at me.
Okay.
But I was reflecting on I don't know about you guys, but when I have these certain moments with certain friends where I'm just like, that is the moment where I knew. And I was reflecting on if I had one for Tia, and I have too many to count, but one of them is definitely when I was in her apartment watching Twilight. She had gotten a cheese boat, like a boat of cubes of cheddar cheese.
What is this combo?
Cheese boat.
So Kara and I used to have a tradition during the Thanksgiving weekend of having a sleepover.
Okay.
And so the West Side Market on the corner, they had party platter things, and I was shopping for our sleepover, and I was like, well, we could just do, I believe they call it girl dinner now, but cheese boat.
No, it was when I say cheese boat and I'm holding my hands like this, it was like a loaf of bread sized trough of chunks of cheddar cheese. Like, this is not some artisanal cheesemonger laid it out. This is this is Tia bought several pounds of basic cheese.
It was intended for an Italian family weekend gathering.
It's just so I showed up to her apartment and she's like, I have cheese, I have wine, I have Twilight, and I look at the cheese and it's just we did make a dent in it. And then after Twilight she was like, and now we're getting insomnia cookies, and I was just like, yes.
Yep.
And that was it.
And then the next day we went to the Russian tea room and had champagne and caviar ice cream sundaes.
I swear, every single time the two of you tell me a story about the last one time we hung out, I'm like, where the fuck were you going in New York to have these experiences? This is crazy. I love it. It's not a bad thing. It's so entertaining. This could be an entire show. Is just Tia and Kara's adventures in the world.
Well, Mike, listen, this is during the pandemic when all when people were starting to go back out into the world, the New York Times was doing all these articles about how Midtown is back and Midtown is trendy, and listing all these old school places the Russian Tea Room and the Bemelman's Bar at the Carlisle, and just all these places where I was just like, please, we were there 4 years ago. Where were you?
On our way to the American Girl doll store.
Oh my God. Oh, which then again like became a hot spot at the tail end of the pandemic for like millennials to go and like have brunch because they serve alcohol in those stores. So you can go to brunch and like get champagne with your doll. And so people will just like sit at tables of like all grown-ups and like their rent-a-dolls.
God, we've ruined everything for children, haven't we?
Geez, oh, Pete.
Listen, Tia, we are denied the traditional markers of adulthood, and so we do what we can.
Maybe if I stopped spending all my money on horse massages.
Designer cats and manicures for your horse.
Brother, I got to rush to this last question so that we can wrap up here because this is I'm having way too much fun.
No, Mike, we're talking about
10:30
Twilight now. Twilight.
So normally the way we wrap up these episodes is I ask the question of, knowing us for a little bit, what comic would you recommend? And Tia, you said, you know what? I want to do what I always do, which is just reverse it completely on you guys because that's what I do. And you said, you've been out of the loop. So what's a recent comic you would recommend to you? And I really had to like pour through my comics here to figure out like what would Tia like maybe actually like out of this stuff. Not to say that you're picky, but I did want to find a book that would like be cool for you. So I had one. Kara, I don't know if you had a thought about this before I dig into mine. Go. Okay. So the book that I would recommend to you is Bloodstained Teeth. This is written by Christian Ward, art by Patrick Reynolds. I could not remember for the life of me if we talked about this, if you had read it before, but it is the book that I was like thinking about. It's like a combination of vampires and cynicism and beautiful art and just really fun like storytelling that was unfortunately cut short. But it's a Christian Ward, Patrick Reynolds, Heather Moore on colors. It's about vampire bullshit. And it's like to the point where it's almost annoying. Like they're poking fun at all of the various vampire mythos in order to tell this story about a vampire who is a part of the firstborns of vampires, which are all of your classic favorite vampires. And this cabal does not appreciate that this guy, Atticus, turned a bunch of people into vampires for money. And they said, you have to go kill all of them now or we're going to kill you. So the story is about him finding all of his vampires spawn and then telling the story about how they got turned and also potentially killing them. It's a pretty fun little book. I enjoyed it.
I vaguely remember this book, but I never read it.
Okay. Yes.
But I love Christian Ward and I love Patrick Reynolds. And fun fact, one time my mom posed for Patrick Reynolds and he painted her in an issue of, I can't remember now, Joe Gollum, I think.
Oh.
And yeah, my mom has the page framed at her house now.
So cool.
Nice.
Yes, that's a great recommendation, though. I love it, and we're all about vampires right now, aren't we? So
I know
yes.
I figured we're like someone said Twilight, and I was like, I got to get this in there. There is a fun Twilight bit in the book that I think you'll also enjoy. So,
cool.
Kara, did you have a book? Okay.
I have a quick recommendation, which is slightly cheating because it's on my birthday wish list, but it's. I have a coupon, Mike. I'm buying it for myself. This is not a hint. I also think Tia would like it.
Okay.
It's it's one of the more recent publications from our beloved Fantagraphics. And the title is Tell Me a Story Where the Bad Girl Wins.
Ooh.
The subtitle is The Life and Art of Barbara Sherman. So she was from the Fantagraphics website, a pioneering cartoonist, an unheralded early master of magazine cartooning. And every single preview image I've seen of her like cartoons, I'm like, yes to all of this, like the spirit of like flapperdom and like female independence and all of this
pre-code.
And it's also like a biography of her. So Caitlin McGurk is the writer/editor of that part, and then the cartoons are by Barbara Sherman. So I thought
awesome.
You might like it from the title.
We'll definitely check both of those out. Thank you.
Yes. We'll slowly but surely get you right back deep in the middle of the shit here. Just one comic book at a time. No, it's funny, Kara. I feel like I've seen cartoons by that cartoonist before, and I didn't know who they were. Just I liked the style, right? It's very like upturned nose, you can't mess with me like type of women from the 20s. That's really cool. I didn't know that Fantagraphics put that book out, so I'm gonna put that on a wish list too. So thanks for the rec.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we should wrap up because I know I told you guys, we'll talk for like 30, 40 minutes, and we're almost at an hour. So
Oops.
Thank you both for your time. Tia, so glad that we're able to do this today. I can't believe you've been on the show for 10 years. I have to say this to everybody now that's like after this episode, because they've all been on longer, which is fucking crazy. So, yeah, I don't know. Thank you for your time and effort and energy over the years, and I'm very much looking forward to this new Wicked and Divine show that's coming out on Patreon later this year. Yeah, I don't know. Thanks. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for bringing us all together and keeping it going for 10 years.
I try. Well, I guess that'll wrap us up here today. Next week's episode, I don't know what next week's episode is. Godspeed to all of you for that. But I want to say thank you to Danny for proof listening tonight. Thank you to Kara and Tia for your time. Thank you to Zander for editing the show. You're all fantastic human beings. Love you guys to death. So until next time, comics are good, and so are you.